that they're numbered to watch them in order. So, because as you know, it's a tutorial and they really should be watched in order. So that's all great.
Yep.
Okay, so last time we finished on slide 129, which was pointing out that Leah and Rachel, this is going to be all over the place. They are really treated equally. When we get to the star calendar, anyway, we'll do what we can here with what we've already learned, which is the Enoch and the Hebrew. So, as you know, Jacob was set up to marry Rachel first, and tricky daddy swapped wives on him, and he ends up marrying Leah. And it was a really cool day, Passover on the Enoch calendar. It was Saturday, April 6th, and you know, April 6th is a meaningful day on our calendar for the birth of Christ. It's 1 Nisan, so that's New Year's Day. On the Hebrew calendar, first day of the year, and the year has a name. This is really important because he's going to have 12 children from these, what's going to be 2 wives. These 2 wives are going to produce him 12 children in 7 years. Those 7 years are the 7 years of Passover as counted as years. In 1 year, Passover is a 7-day week in the springtime. But when you count every day as a year, which is what the capital letters in this slide 130 means, the first year of Passover, but it's really the first of 7 years. And the first year is the most holy, and the 7th year is the most holy. But it's a holy week of years. So all of the 12 tribes of Israel, 12 children, one of them's a girl, Dinah. Benjamin's born later. So it's 11 boys and a girl are born in the holy week of years called Passover. That to me is awesome. If you know how we've talked about how the years are measured, this can't be fudged. You start with Adam. Well, I haven't shown that yet. We haven't got to Adam, but you start with Adam and you just go around that wheel that I showed you before when we did the perpetual Hebrew calendar, and you just count the years that way. There's no changing it all through history once you pick a year to start with, which I do at Adam. So anyway, this is amazing stuff. Now, he marries Rachel 1 week later, and that on the Enoch calendar is end of Passover, is 7 days after Passover. So they're both married on the 2 holy days of Passover. And when you look at the star calendars and all the others, it's just amazing how equal they are. Okay, next slide, 130. So now we're going to talk about Rachel's death. She dies at only 48 years old, and she dies near Bethlehem, giving birth to Benjamin. And this shows the date, and it's a holy day, one reversed of Sivan. So this is also Benjamin's birthday, as well as her death date. It's 1 adult, which is kind of a bad day. That's when things go bad, and sure enough, she's dying. And it's 1 jaguar, and 1 jaguar is Rebecca's day. She's her mother-in-law. That's Rebecca's born on it, dies on it, and so that's a day they shared, and also with Benjamin. Oh, and of course, Benjamin and Rachel share all of these days. We've talked before about how there are links between mothers and their children, or fathers and their children. Well, if the mother dies at childbirth, that locks in the link. They share all of those days together, and that was something that came out in my studies here. Rachel's going to tie a lot to Mary. They both have children in Bethlehem. Anyway, there's a lot of ties between Rachel and the Virgin Mary. Okay, next slide, 132. Leah has 1 set of twins. A daughter, Dinah, and her brother Zebulun are both born by the way, all of the sons, I don't go through all of the sons' birthdays here because they're tied mostly to the stars. They have 12 sons, each in a different constellations, and I wait until you've learned the star calendar before I go through all the birth dates of the sons. But I do a little bit here to tie to the mothers. So of her, she had 7 of those 12 children, and 7 children in 7 years, okay? And was grieving over having a barren period where she gives her maid. I mean, I don't know how many women here have had 7 children in 7 years and are grieving over a barren period. But 2 of those children were twins, and she was about a year without a child. So anyway, Dinah and Zebulun are twins. And it's interesting how the Bible actually tacitly says they're twins. When you look at all of the other births of the sons, it'll say, and Leah conceived again and bare this, Judah. And she conceived again and bare Issachar. And she conceived again and bore Zebulun. And then she bore Dinah. The whole clue that they're twins is she didn't conceive again. So if you fell asleep reading the begats in the Bible, you missed that. That's how seriously I take the book of Genesis. I believe it's a revelation. And when little words are left out like that, it's important. And it turns out that's the only way she can have the 7 children in 7 years in a barren period anyway. Somebody's got to be twins. But it actually tells you that. Anyway, they're born on a female holy day, the Feast of Esther. So Dinah gets the cool day. On the star calendars, they're born on different days, and he gets a man's day, and she gets another queen princess day. So it's really cool. She dies at age 50. Now, that's just a couple of years longer than Rachel died in childbirth at age 48. And they're twins. So just 2 years later, Leah dies. And again, it's on this really cool day, 1 light, 1 resurrection, 1 Tammuz. And her son Judah is born on 1 Tammuz. So she's got a tie to one of her son's dates. Her death date ties to one son's birth date, just like Rachel, her death date ties to one son's birth date. So everything's the same. Let's go to slide 133. Next slide. So this parent-child link thing is really important. This is one of the double checks when you know you have the right birthday, because they're not only on holy days in the right year, but the parent-childs will link together, the husband and wives will link together, and the children and their children will link together. So I've got here that parent-child links, and by link I mean that the parent and the child share the same date on one of the sacred calendars. So parent-child links on vital dates on the Hebrew and sacred rounds often exist. And when I learned about star calendars, it'll be in star calendars too. That's because those are the important calendars, but the other calendars aren't even used for birth dates. They're not usually even holy days, like the Enoch calendar. It's used for other things. 4 of Jacob's sons. Now look at this. 4 of his sons tied to his birthday on the sacred round. He's born on 1 temple, and that's the 1 day in all 260 days that represents birth. Temple is the body, so it's the first day you get your temple. Levi and Judah are both circumcised on that day. But Dan and Gad, who are the 2 firstborn children of the 2 handmaids, Bilhah and Zilpah, both of the firstborn handmaiden children are born on 1 temple. So there's an order to this. This is not just random holy days. There's patterns and order. And the bottom says the birth dates of Jacob's 12 sons will be given in more detail when the star calendar is studied. Yeah, because they're tied. We said that they're tied to zodiac figures. But that's 4 1 temples Oh, and it turns out the circumcision date, and it'll say in the law of Moses, and it was, I don't know if they had this, Abraham was given the law of circumcision. I don't know that he was told exactly what day to do it on. But on the 8th day of a young boy's life, which means a week after his birth, he's born on the 1st day and 7 days later is the 8th day. That was the day for circumcision. So it turns out these circumcision days are very important, almost as important as a birthday, and that's why I list them there. Okay, go to slide 134. Aha, we get to a big one. This is Abraham's birthday. Abraham is born on the Day of Atonement. Now that's the most sacred holy day of all of the sacred holy days on the Hebrew calendar. Abraham was born on the Day of Atonement in 2052 BC, which is 10 Tishri. And that day was also one temple. Now, on the last slide, we just saw that his grandson, Jacob, his son is Isaac and his son is Jacob. Jacob's also born on one temple, and 2 of his sons are born on one temple. So they tie back to Grandpa Abraham. And a lot of times, there's ties between grandpas and grandchildren. Just like this, Abraham's tied to his grandchildren. He'll be tied to his son Isaac too, but it's like he gets a special tie to grandchildren, and this is very common. Now, something really, I put in the picture here, something really cool happened, and it's in the book of Jasher. It says there was a sign in the heavens on the night of his birth, and it said there were 4 stars that did something amazing on the night of his birth. Well, if you look up, this date was determined strictly from sacred calendars, of Day of Atonement, and the one temple and all of that. When you look up what happened in the sky, there is a double conjunction. There's a conjunction of Mars and Mercury, and also of Jupiter and Saturn. And it's in the constellation Libra, and the Mars-Mercury is right by the star Alpha Libra, which is called the Redeemed in my work. It's one of the 2 balance trays of the scales. And it's the one that has the weight in it that redeems. The man is in the other balance scale, and the name of that star is lacking or wanting. It's where Daniel said, the Lord said there on the wall that you were weighed in the scales and found wanting. I called it lacking because that's more clear in our language. But anyway, there were 4 stars, double conjunction, right in the same constellation on the night he's born. So there you go. That's right out of the book of Jasher. Okay, next slide, 135. Sarah, the wife of Abraham. She is born on Saturday, the 16th of May, 2042 BC. She's 10 years younger than Abraham. And that is first fruits, which is one of the big holy days, one of the 7 main holy days in the law of Moses. The major holy days are in red on my pictures. And it's one reed, that's the Savior's birthday, is one reed. It means resurrection. And it's one birth. Now this is an important thing. When you look at Isaac, he's born, I think we might have just skipped his, maybe we'll do him next. I think, we did him earlier on the Venus calendar, and we talked about the Venus pattern. He's born on the Venus calendar. Jacob is born on one birth on the, I believe, he's born on a key day on the Venus calendar. So Jacob and Isaac are both Venus calendar. When I got to Abraham, there's nothing about Venus calendar. And I've always suspected that when I do the Jupiter calendar, that he'll be born on the Jupiter calendar, because that's like the highest priesthood thing. But at first, I knew nothing about a uniform Venus calendar. When that was discovered, lo and behold, both Abraham and his wife, Sarah, are born on one birth on the uniform Venus calendar. And as I've explained before, the uniform calendar is like an alternate calendar. So if it just doesn't work out to be born on the main Venus calendar, this is like an alternate. So he and his wife Oh, and that was the other thing. Sarah was not born on anything sacred on the Venus calendar. But they're both born on, and one birth is symbolic, of course, of birth. And that's in a year and 3/5. That's the one day in a year and 3/5, 584 days. The one day which symbolizes birth, and Abraham and his wife are both born on it. You see, I get excited over this stuff because the Lord has a plan for everything. Let's go to 136. Now we're getting to Abraham's marriage date. He marries Sarah. Sarah is his brother Haran's daughter. So Sarah's actually his niece. His brother Haran was like 32 years older than he was. And he died before there's a story there. He dies, and he has a daughter. He actually has two daughters. And Abraham marries one of the daughters. And Abraham's other brother, Nahor, marries the other. So the two brothers marry the two daughters of Haran. Their marriage is on Saturday, the 4th of April, 2000 BC. And he's born 2003, and he's born in 2052. So they're like 49 years old when they get married. That date's not in the Bible, but is knowable. And so they're married on Passover on the Enoch calendar. And that's one thing the Enoch calendar is for. Birth dates are on Hebrew and sacred round. But almost all of the marriages of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are all going to be on Passover. Remember, we just looked at Rachel. Well, it was Leah that got the beginning date of Passover. Leah and Jacob are married on Passover. When we get to Isaac, he's going to be married on Passover. And it was a holy year. And that's another thing we're going to see, that these marriages of the great patriarchs from Adam on are in holy years as well as on holy days. Okay, slide 137. Okay, now we are to Ishmael, the firstborn son. Remember that Sarah wasn't able to have a baby at first, and she gives her handmaid, her Egyptian handmaid, to Abraham, and they have a son named Ishmael, and he's born on Thursday, the 6th of September, on the Feast of Trumpets. Okay, now this is another cool one. He's born on one birth on the Venus calendar. I'll give you a little bonus that's not in here. He's born on one birth on the Venus calendar and one resurrection on the Mercury calendar on the day one serpent, sacred round. And Isaac, that's going to be born, whose birth we've already looked at. Isaac, the birth and resurrection are reversed. Isaac's born on one resurrection, Venus, and one birth, Mercury, and also on one serpent. So both Isaac and Ishmael are both born on one serpent, and then they swap places on Mercury and Venus. So you couldn't make it more fair. When I was doing this work, I sort of wanted Ishmael and Isaac to be treated equally, because, the Arabs they're the descendants of Ishmael, and they have him as the promised son and the firstborn, which he was. And the Jews have the other one, and I'm just so glad God treated them equally. They got about as close of identical holy days as you could have. Okay, we can do a few more before we have the question and answer time. The covenant of circumcision. Maybe we're still going to do Isaac's, but I know we did Isaac's day. But anyway, the covenant of circumcision was given a year before Isaac's birth on the Hebrew calendar. It's Saturday, the 28th of March, 1953 BC, on the day consecration, to be made holy on 10 Nisan. Isaac will be born a year later on consecration, 10 Nisan, in 1952. That day was also the spring equinox, zero spring on the Enoch. Oh, and on the priest calendar, which we did when we very first started the class, it's the day one father. And father's the short name. It really means father chosen by God. And it is one thing Father Abraham it's called. He's Father Abraham. He's not High Priest Abraham. He's not, his main title is Father Abraham. And he's born, and the covenant was given on one father. And that was the covenant about his children. I call it, it says here, a covenant of circumcision, but it's more than that. Circumcision is only a token of the covenant. It's the covenant that all the world would be blessed through his children. Oh, this is what I thought we had already done, and I take it back. It's now we're doing it. I thought we covered this with Venus calendar. So there is a creation pattern in the Venus cycle. This is really important. It's going to be used in modern day Joseph Smith's time. The Lord has a 3-step program on creating something. A project is announced on the day one creation. Now this wheel, I meant to put an arrow on this. This is a Venus cycle wheel, and it goes around counterclockwise like this. The creation pattern, the project's announced on one creation. One creation is the day on, we're going to see that on the next slide. But it's only 2 days after the covenant of circumcision. That's the day the angels, oh, thank you. I should watch your, I'm sorry, I should watch you closer. Yeah, 139 we're on. I'm watching my own screen. I got to watch yours. Isaac is announced on one creation, and that will turn out to be only 2 days after the law of circumcision was given. And that's in the book of Jasher. It says, it gives you the number of days. Then the second day in the project is the beginning. It was when you actually begin the project. You begin the project on one birth. The project called Isaac is begun at conception, and that's on the day one birth, which happens to be about 3 months after the creation, and it just happens to be 9 months before the completion date. So it's 1 full year from, on the Venus calendar, so it turns out to be a full Enoch year from creation around to resurrection. Anyway, Isaac is born a year later on the day one resurrection. That's when the project is completed. So let's look at that. I think we're going to look at 2 more slides, and then we are done. So here it is, 2 days after the circumcisions, according to Jasher, there's the reference. 3 angels told Sarah she would bear Isaac. That was Monday. The other day was Saturday the 28th. Now it's Monday the 30th of March. That's one creation. And that's the same day Abraham was told that the angels were going to leave him and go destroy Sodom and Gommorah. And that Abraham had the conversation that they would save Sodom if they could find 10 righteous people there. And they only found, what was it, 8 or less than 10. Lot and his wife and some daughters and sons got to leave. So this is all on this precise timing. And now we go to the next slide, 141. Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed after Lot. After Lot ate unleavened bread with the angels on Passover on Thursday, the 2nd of April, 15 Nisan. I put in the 4 quake because on the Aztec calendar, they show the destructions of the world. One of the destructions was on 4 quake, and this was the day 4 quake, and it was a pretty bad destruction. So that's when Lot and wife and some of the kids and married kids leave. And the final one here is going to be the birth of Isaac, and we'll stop here. Next slide, 142. And on slide 142, we read that Isaac was born on Tuesday, the 16th of March, being consecration, like I promised, 1 year after. 1 Hebrew year after, 10 Nisan, and it was 1 resurrection on the Venus, meaning the end of the project on the creation pattern. And guess what? He's born, oh, I said that already. He's born on 1 serpent, the same as his brother Ishmael. So that's a good stopping place for today. We've got the birth dates of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, how they We haven't done, yeah, we did. I think we did part of Isaac's wife. I think we've done her birthday and Sarah's and Leah and Rachel. So I think we've done those three main patriarchs and their wives now. So we will go on from there, but you get the idea on how these are all intertwined so much. Okay, now this is my question and answer period. And let me respond. I remember one, I've had a couple of people ask about the eclipse tonight. So let me just comment on the eclipse as a written in question, and then I'll look at the chat box to see what other questions might be showing up. But so sure enough, there's a lunar eclipse tonight, and it's hailed as supposed to be, for those doing the blood moons, it's supposed to be the last of this series of a bunch of blood moons. And it's also a super wolf moon eclipse, meaning super meaning the moon is close and looks big. The wolf moon is just the Indians named each month, each full moon each month, and it was the wolf. It's not werewolves or anything. It's just the wolf month. But let's see, the eclipse, the totality in mountain time is from 9:40 to around 10:40. So a lunar eclipse is where the moon goes into the Earth's shadow, and the shadow is bigger than the moon, so that it takes the moon a full hour. It's in the whole complete shadow for a full hour, and it's basically 9:40 to 10:40, and it basically starts to enter that shadow around 8:30 to 40, which is right now. We're all clouded over here, but if you got clear skies, this is probably worth looking at.
We're clouded over in Boise. Does anyone have clear skies?
We have them. I'm looking at the moon right here in Mesa right now, so hopefully it will stay.
Good. So
It's always clear in Mesa.
Mesa's mostly, that's good for clear skies down there. That's great. Well, anyway, it should be starting going into the total. Technically, yeah, eclipse started an hour ago, but that's the penumbra, and you can barely see it. You'll see the sharp line where the moon very soon starts to enter the full total. And it'll take an hour to enter it, and then it's in it for an hour and an hour to leave it. So it's about a 3-hour deal. Everybody wants me to tell the secret, hidden, mystical meanings. And my work is almost totally with these sacred calendars, which are average positions of the moon, average positions of Venus, not the real positions. I showed you that one slide at the birth of Abraham, but those were not holy days on those calendars. Those were the real positions in the sky. I'm convinced the Lord is using them too. Real eclipses mean something, real conjunctions. I've just never studied that. This is a huge...
Hey, John. Yeah, I'm getting some comments that you went way soft. You're soft on my end too. I don't know what happened to your microphone.
I'm leaning back and relaxing. How's that? Is that better?
It's a little bit better.
Well, I think I'm talking into the, I think, anyway, okay, I'll be as clear as I can.
Yep.
I don't have any big insights on these things of the actual meaning of the eclipses, or even if the only thing I sort of have come up with is an eclipse is meaningful where it's visible. And on a lot of these blood moons, they say, oh, well, this is a sign for Jerusalem. And it wasn't even visible in Jerusalem. It was at the North Pole or somewhere. I don't believe that's a sign for Jerusalem. The big solar eclipse last year on Monday, the 21st of August, that went all the way across the United States. I believe that is some kind of sign for the United States, and some people have commented on what that means. But I'm not one of them, so I'm sorry to disappoint, but I don't know the meanings of the actual signs in the skies as much as these sacred calendars. See, I might look at my email because somebody did write in. Well, that was the main question I remember. I'm going to look at my email right now to see if there was a more to that question. Okay, here we are. Question for class. I got it. Yeah, this is about the eclipse and what is it tied to? And okay, she's asking about the sacred day, like today's sacred day, and on what it means. And from what I can tell, they're totally separate. That eclipse last year, a huge, one of the first only eclipses, only visible in the United States, nowhere else. If you look at the sacred calendars for that eclipse, it was nothing. It was like not holy on any of my 16 calendars. It was just a regular day. But it becomes a huge day because of, the heavenly event. So she's trying to find meaning in the sacred day of the events. And before I can say this, before I start coming up with a theory of anything, I have to have 3 examples. If I could find 3 lunar eclipses that all were on significant things on the sacred calendars, I might look at that. I haven't even done that study, and the few that I've looked at have had nothing. So I'm spending a lot of words to say that I don't know the meaning of it. I'm seeing comments here on the chat that are mostly about weather all around the country. We got people in Chicago and Oregon and all over the place here. Can I comment? Oh yeah, yeah. There's also a Venus-Jupiter conjunction, and I I don't have a comment on that. Excuse me. I only found out about that when I was researching the eclipse a little bit. Again, I'm not good on the meaning of conjunctions and the real things in the sky, just because I've never really studied it. Another question is, how do I determine birth dates of these people? Is it a mix of the Bible, Book of Mormon, and secular sources? Yes, the Bible, in almost every case, either the Bible or the Book of Jasher, tells you the year. So it'll say Jacob is married, and he's married at age 40, and he has their son at age 60. And so somewhere you need a starting point, and I told you how we got that by counting back from the Exodus, the 430 years to the birth of Jacob. So you need to somehow get a starting year. And then you have the years, and the most you ever get from either the Bible or the Book of Jasher is a year. So now I've got a year. Then you find out, what do all of the other dates have in common? Is there a pattern? The section 52, the Lord said, I will show you a pattern in all things that you may not be deceived. So I look for the pattern. And the pattern for all of the prophets is that they're born on holy days. And on my tutorial that's current, the one I'll put up tonight, I'm going through the whole Joseph Smith family, the father, the mother, Hiram, Joseph, and Samuel. I should look up William. I haven't even looked him up. But all 5 of those are born on holy days on the Hebrew calendar. There's only so many holy days. There's about 20 altogether. To have all 5 of the key players in that family all be born on Hebrew holy days. And these are days that I'm not making up. This is in the church history. See, that's a pattern. Well, it was true for all of them. So, number 1, I'm looking for Hebrew holy days. And they're all also born on a sacred round holy day. And so the main thing I'm looking for is those 2 holy days. But then, and you'll find a few of those in a year. You might find 3 or 4 in a year. Then you start looking at the links. And in every case, there's a link, way more links than you'd expect. A link from husband to wife, and then the wife to the one child, and the husband to either the same or some other children, and the husband to the fathers and to the parents. And you get all those other links on the same days, on the same holy calendars, and that puts it way, way, way beyond chance. And I know how to calculate probabilities, which is a class that almost everybody seems to have missed. And most people don't even believe in statistics or probabilities, and that's very sad because it's been ruined principally by those that believe in evolution, and they believe anything's possible because they refuse to believe that there's no chance of evolution happening. Anyway, most people don't believe statistical arguments, but if you've studied math, you do. That's what works. That's how insurance companies work, is on the average death rates, etc. And you can build a company on it. They work. So I can calculate that the odds are way beyond. For instance, the way after I had the date of Abraham and Sarah, after those dates were determined by Hebrew and sacred round, to have them both be on the day of birth on a calendar that had not even been discovered yet, on the uniform Venus calendar. See, that locks it in. That's way beyond chance. Anyway, so that's how the dates are determined. And they're asking about Samuel's death date. I haven't looked that up. And they say he might have died mysteriously, perhaps poisoned. Those in the family are sure. A lot of people are sure that was poisoning, and I'm one of them. So I'll make this comment because I've never really looked up his death date, as I recall. It doesn't matter if you're poisoned, if you fall out of a plane, if your parachute doesn't open. If you're dying on a holy day, you're dying on a holy day. Same with birth. I've told you, it doesn't matter if the doctor does a cesarean because he has a trip planned to Hawaii. You're born when you're born, you die when you die, and we're not in charge of it. And it comes out, everything works. Well, Joseph Smith is murdered by a mob, and he's murdered on a huge day in history, it'll turn out. So, and he didn't plan that, and Jesus is born. A lot of people are not planning their death dates. They're killed by enemies, and yet they're on these amazing holy days. So to me, it's a testimony that God understands everything ahead. There's a big master plan. And I've read several books by people that can see things on the other side. And they say, if you've had a bad accident, like a car accident, and you're blaming God and your parents were killed, or you're so sad, or you don't have any legs anymore and you're blind, they've said, you signed up for all of that. It was not an accident. You signed up in the world before, and you thought it'd be useful for you to learn from. And don't be blaming God because you signed up for it. Now, that's not in LDS literature, but several people have said that seem to know, and it makes sense to me. I believe it. It shows where the justice is. And a lot of the children who are born with Down syndrome or other, defects or problems, a lot of them signed up to do that. All children are going to go to celestial kingdom anyway. A lot of those people signed up to do that so it would bring love to their family, and the family would have to care for them. And the whole thing of life is about love. The big thing of, can we learn to love each other and be of one heart and one mind? And some people are finding that's pretty tough to do. So, so that's my answer on that. I have never looked up Joseph. In fact, I might do that because I'm doing Hit the Family right now, so I might check on that soon. Okay, any other questions?
I have a quick question for you, John.
Okay.
Hey, we talk about, you referenced Doctrine and Covenants 52:14. I think it's 39, wherever it is in 39 now. But pattern in all things, lest we be deceived. Pertaining to calendars and the other pattern that's mentioned in DNC, it's 29:30. The first shall be last. It's in all books of Scripture, of course, but the first shall be last and the last shall be first. In all things whatsoever I create by the power of my Spirit. Right. Do you have anything at the top of your mind? What was at the beginning with calendars that kind of are crescendoing to be the end now, according to that pattern?
Absolutely, absolutely. The whole Garden of Eden is at the end when you do the calendars. the calendars start when? I've already told you. Oh, no, I haven't. We're going to find out about Adam. We haven't got there yet. When we find out, we're going to find out these calendars all start when they leave the Garden of Eden, which was like a terrestrial state, and they come into the telestial, the fallen world. All of the calendars start then. That means, if you think about it, the whole Garden of Eden deal was the end of the last cycle. And yet it's the first. It's when Adam and Eve are born and created, and in a real way, that's the first of our cycle. So the first, and I call it the zeroth, because that's how it works on calendars. The 0 day is the same as the last day of the last one. So the end of that creation, and call it the days of creation if you want. The culmination, right? There's 7 days of creation, right? He does the plants and the animals in 7 days. The culmination, the end of that's the Garden of Eden, where he makes man and the culmination is the woman. The man wasn't all that. But anyway, and so you see it there. Now, a similar thing's going to happen. They're going to have a burning coming up here, which is going to be the end of this celestial kingdom. And it's a transition. It's the beginning of the millennium. We're actually in a way in the beginning. We're right now. We're in a transition. We're at the beginning of millennium, and we're at the end of the world. And then there's another transition at the end, and it's called the little season. And there's this war and stuff. And after that, the earth is celestialized. And in a way, when it's celestialized, that's the beginning of the next creation, but it's the end of this creation. But it's right down on every calendar, on every level. And I actually use the number 0. So there's a day 0 on the Venus calendar. There's a day 0 resurrection and then 1 resurrection, or 0 birth and 1 birth. 1 birth is actually the first day of the birth, but the 0 birth is the last day of the quickening season. But it's the last is the first, and the first is the last on every one of these calendars. And I like to use 0 to show that. On the ones that don't use 0, like on our clock, I had a big slide on this. The 12 is actually the 0 on the clock. It should be numbered 0 through 11. And after the 11th hour is done, then when I say should be, I mean in modern Arabic numerals, the way we think. A lot of programmers would like to have a 0 there at the top. In fact, on the 24-hour clock, the government clock, it is 0. It's 0 hours. And it goes through 23. But anyway, so the 12 is like a 0. The 12 is the last of the old, and it's the first of the new. So it's in clocks, it's in calendars, it's everywhere, and even in the whole age of the year. So that is my answer, and it is time to quit. So,
well, John, I show that I have 1 minute left.
Okay, quick question.
Okay, and this might not be a quick one. We might be able to talk about it next time. But all of our discussion here, especially with the constellation, the calendars, has increased my belief and my knowledge of these, that God really does operate according to a pattern. And so the other one I want to just ask if you've ever considered, there's this 4 to 5 generation curse that happens when a covenant people reject, whoever came to declare the words of Christ to them. Have you ever used that and seen that in calendars with the 4 to 5 generation curse, where all of a sudden the alignment comes, or is that often too difficult to determine?
I will say the direct answer is no, I have not seen that, nor have I looked for that, nor do I associate it with any time period. But I will make this comment. So when they were doing experiments with fruit flies, they actually removed the eyes of some of the fruit flies so that they would be blind. And they checked on their children, and the first generation was blind from the sins of the parents. The second generation was blind. The third generation was blind. The fourth generation had perfect eyes again. the people were doing evolution, and they thought they might start to evolve slowly. They didn't. It's like 3 generations were blind, and the 4th generation, the curse was gone. And they don't usually quote that experiment much with people that believe evolution, because it kind of shoots it down in a lot of ways. But so anyway, there's a 4th generation curse on fruit flies. See, you never know what you're going to get when you ask me a question.
Wow, good. So the pattern shows there too. All right. Well, thank you, John.
Pattern is there. All righty. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks much.
Hey, thanks. Bye.
Bye.